My guest on Legends is probably one of my favorite people, none other than Chico Fernandez, author, fly tyer, fly fisherman, lecturer, musician. I mean, yeah, I just can go on and on and on. And Chico, it's really great being on the show with us. I wanted to ask you something that I've always wanted to ask, main thing I wanted to ask you was, how did you first get into fly fishing? Who introduced you to it?
43 years ago.
Now you're showing your age.
I was 4, of course.
Oh, okay.
I lived in Cuba. My dad was very well-to-do, and he bought a very large yacht. And he couldn't find the captain in Cuba that he liked. He couldn't find the right one to run. Anyway, ended up hiring a guy named Don Roban from Miami, an American guy who had an architect degree, but decided he wanted to be a captain. And so he flew over there. Don spoke some Spanish. And when he came in, I took a liking to him a lot. I was a teenager. And I took him fishing for snook and tarpon at the mouth of this Jibacoa River. And I brought my spinning rod and my jigs. I was going to show him. And he brought a fly rod. He brought an Orvis 9.5-foot bamboo with a, GAF line, which is a 9-weight.
GAF line,
it was
right,
a 9-weight.
Yeah.
I was like enamored with a line in the air and everything. He brought flies that were Joe Brooks streamers, and he caught snook. He didn't catch tarpon, he caught snook, and I was done. I mean,
you were hooked.
Oh, yeah, for life.
Okay.
And I fished with Don during the time that we were there in Cuba, and then with communists.
Was it like a wading type thing, or did you actually go in little boats? And how did you?
We did both, but most of that was done at the mouth of this St. River. Was really a creek. It was 100 feet wide at the mouth, but snook came in there with the tide.
Right.
And so we were wading in the sandy beach.
Wow.
Oh, it was wonderful.
Yeah, because there was no one else really probably doing that at all.
No. In Cuba, I was the first Cuban to fly fish. And Joe Brooks and Ted Williams used to go over there, and I used to see them in the flat at a distance. Didn't speak English then, but I knew, Ted, last 400 batter and all that. And Joe Brooks, I used to see his pictures on the magazine.
So you knew
didn't
who he
read
was.
it. I knew who he was. I couldn't read it very well.
So when you came to Miami, you had to learn to speak.
That's right. I spoke very, very little. My friends said I used to speak like Tarzan, Me want,
Me want this.
Me want this, me want that. But that's how it was. And then I went to University of Miami and
everything else.
And all that jazz.
How about the fly tying? I mean, look, let's face it, Chico's Bonefish Special. I mean, there are so many flies, even the bendback, and I know you'll say, well, the bendback's been around or whatever, but it's attributed to you. I mean, everybody thinks of you as the bendback,
The fly tying came because at the time we were doing all of this, Flip Pallet, Norman Duncan, who came up with the Duncan Loop, and the late John Emery, which was also very innovative. You could hardly get flies or anything. We go to herders, that big cattle, and order the stuff.
But it would be trouty kind of looking.
To find a nice bucktail,
find
a white bucktail was difficult. So you ended up tying your own flies, and you had to get good at that. We built a lot of our own fly rods, buy a blank, one piece, those days in salt water.
Now, when was this? What year?
This is I came in 1959, so this is 59, 60, 61, like that. Fishing was very, very good then, I guess you hear from everybody. But we used to go to the Tamiami Trail and had days of 100 snook in one.
And there was no guardrail, right?
That's right, no guardrail.
No guardrail.
That came 10, 12 years late, in the 70s.
Right.
No guardrail.
No guardrail.
Even if you had a low-riding car, you could still see the snook popping with the guardrail. Now we didn't.
Well, there's a little legendary story I heard, scuttlebutt around, of you and Flip in a Mercedes driving down the trail or something.
The reason I got out, the way I got out of communism in Cuba, because my parents were well-to-do and would probably have been shot in the firing squad, literally.
Oh, yeah.
It was that I came in, there was a ferry that came from Havana to Key West.
Okay.
And that's during the racing days in Sebring. So I brought my two-seater Mercedes.
Oh, you brought it over.
Yeah, and I had it here for a couple of years, but we didn't have the money to support it. I sold it, and all the money went to University of Miami. But yeah, we used to ride over there doing 100, 120, 125 miles an hour with all the bamboo flowers and everything, feathers flying and all that to get over there. We used to do that trip in 40 minutes, 35, 40 minutes, 45 minutes from Miami. Now on my Cherokee, it takes me an hour and 20, an hour and 30 minutes.
Yeah. So you'd fish that whole span of the trail, or did you have favorite kind of, was it closer towards Marco?
Closer to Marco.
Marco.
The best area started in the little town of Ochapi. That has the smallest post office.
Yeah.
And it went all the way to the bend, actually went beyond the bend of Marco.
Okay.
And then there was a couple of canals, Isles Capri.
Okay.
Had big snook too.
Yeah.
And we used to later take a station wagon, and the police didn't like this, but one of us would sit on top of the station wagon, and we'd go at 20, 30 miles an hour looking for the big cruisers.
Right.
And then we would go
get up ahead of one?
Yeah, get way ahead and hide on one of the palmetto bushes. Because, if they saw you casting, they were right on the surface. And those fish averaged 15 to 30 pounds. And when they came by, you were behind, with your back to it.
Right.
You back cast.
Right.
to the snook, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's we've done trail fishing, but now with the guardrails and all the traffic, it's tough. You probably didn't hardly see a car go by.
Not as many cars at all. I'll tell you what we saw was neat. I'm not a motorcycle fan. I was always a sports car fan, but there was several Vince Black Shadow motorcycles, and occasionally you'd hear the scream while you were fly fishing, and you see this guy come in. I think I can judge speed, especially those days having raced sports cars, and I think it would. Certainly doing 125, 130, 135 mile an hour.
Oh, yeah.
And he was laying flat, always laying complete flat. He didn't have his, flat like that. And he just, that was it.
Like a mosquito.
Yeah, I said, gee, if I ever hook him on a back cast. I did hook a Volkswagen Beetle on a back cast, and he broke the rod, and he stripped most of the reel. So
But you kept your reel, though, but broke
kept
the rod.
Reel, broke the rod. Yeah,
I've heard stories of ripping reels off.
Couldn't slow him down.
Yeah, what a catch.
What a catch.
What a catch. Tell me, there was a funny story you once told me, and how you got your nickname Chico.
What happened simply was that in 1960, I was a member of the Tropical Anglers Club.
Right.
And I had won the fly fishing trophy. They had fly spinning plug casting on that. Won the fly fishing. And my name is Jesus Manuel Fernandez.
Right.
Well, never mind all of that. So it became Jesus Fernandez. But Jesus is spelled Jesus.
Right.
In the Latin countries, Jesus it's not Jesus, it's just Jesus, like Joseph isn't Saint Joseph.
Exactly,
just Joseph. Well, here, the guys at the club said, look, this is going to be like Jesus Christ, and, tough name to live up to. You can't do this.
Can't do it.
So, in the meantime, Captain Mac, the guy who made the Seamaster fly reels, he was kind of a very good friend. I fished these reels. He was always pushing me to finish college, which I did. He was a good guy, a good friend through all the years. He used to call me Chico from time to time. When the trophy came, he said Chico Fernandez. I didn't mind. I figured it was a temporary thing.
So it's stuck.
It's stuck.
I mean, now it's Chico.
It's Chico Fernandez.
Is Chico here?
That's right. It's Chico Fernandez.
Chico.
Never mind Jesus Manuel Fernandez.
So from that point on, when was that? What year was this?
That was 1960. 1960.
That's amazing.
I'm not big on keeping trophies and all that, but I have that one because I remember that.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I have that one in my room.
Let me ask you about some of the world records. I mean, I don't know how many of our viewers know that, but you did have a lot. I think the redfish is still standing.
Yeah, the redfish still standing. Yeah.
I mean, hence they used to call you Mr. Redfish.
That was an exciting thing to do.
That wasn't caught in South Florida, though.
No, that was caught in the Oregon Inlet inside flats. The Outer Banks, close to a little town called Mateo, which is where several actors live there. I can't think of the name of one now, but several actors live there. Andy Williams. Andy Griffin.
Andy Griffin
lives there. That's who he is. Anyway, in those days, there'd be big schools of those reds, and they'd run 30 to 60 or 65. I had 60,
You're
70
kidding
pound
me.
reds follow what looked like 5 foot, 5.5 foot red follow the fly. Didn't take it. When we hooked this one, I thought it's a nice fish, but let's horse him in and get a real fish.
Get a real fish.
Yeah,
right.
when we lifted him up, I said, oh, it's a little bigger. And the guy said, no, you've been looking at the bigger fish. Let's put it on the scale. And it was 42 pounds. Wow. 5 ounces.
And nobody's really topped that. Is the red fishing still like that there? Or is
No, it really
No.
isn't. That's still the record on 12 pound. Actually, I got it on 10 pound tippet. On 10 pound
You're
tippet.
kidding
Yeah.
me. Oh, yeah, but there's no, the 12.
What happened is the 10 pound tippet got closed, all the politics. And so by the time mine got approved, I got moved
To 12.
To 12, yeah, to 12. But it was caught on 10,
12-pound
yeah.
test.
Yeah.
That's
and
incredible.
And the guy didn't want to take us out, you know. A very country gentleman.
He didn't want these fly fishermen from South Florida.
Yeah, this was
and
like
a Hispanic
wimpy.
one, too.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
A Latin with a fly rod.
Latin with a fly
And he kept
rod.
saying, I have a reputation. I said, what are you talking about? You know, is it the Cuban thing or the fly rod thing? But it was mainly the fly rod thing. They fish with real tackle, big tackle,
Yeah.
and some wimpy guy with a fly. And he really was not even going to take me. I'll tell you real quick what happened. He said, I won't take you, but I'll meet you for breakfast. Well, you know, I rode all the way over there.
You're set up for this.
Yeah,
you
set up
wanted
for
it.
this. Get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to meet this big red-headed guy with a big red beard. And he had ordered himself too, a 5-egg omelet. Was called a Vernon omelet because after him. And it
was
had
named
mushroom.
after him.
Yeah, it was just a big. Well, I've always been a big eater, and
Oh.
those 18 years ago I was a better eater. So
Yeah.
ate the omelet, ate the big loaf of bread that they had for me, drank all the coffee, had the big glass of orange juice, and I think that kind of put me as a real man. Never mind, I had a
He
fly rod.
thought you could handle
And
it.
yeah, and he just, I thought we were leaving.
He judged you on breakfast.
Yeah. And he said, well, let's go. And that was it. Oh, and then he said he had a flats boat. Well, he had the smallest boat in the area.
Right.
But the flatboat was a 23-foot inboard outboard.
Oh,
Push
gee.
boat was not in the
So it
vocabulary.
was tough to get. They were shallow, some of these fish, weren't
It was
they?
about 2 feet, 2.5 feet of water. He'd run around the school and get within 200 feet and say, sick 'em. And I said, sick 'em? I can't cast that far. He said, boy, I thought you were good.
Oh, gee.
I had a fly that big. I said,
Yeah.
can't throw 200 feet. I said, you don't throw 200 feet with a fly. Never mind the excuse. Let's see what you can do. So
He
I
didn't understand.
Oh, no. I
No.
huff and puff and threw 90 feet or 85 feet. The fly was this big.
Big.
And he said, oh, God, we have problem, boy. Well, let's see what we can do. Anyway, he ran around and drifted just right, and I made like an 85-foot cast.
And
with a
just
fish,
got it in front of
with
the
a
fish.
4.0, 8.5, 7.5, 8
Rod?
inch. Oh, yeah. The fish were big, and I thought that's what I needed. And
What kind of fly was it?
it was a big bendback, white with a blue back.
And that's what you threw at the
mostly
redfish.
out of fish, mostly out of fishing.
Fisher, so it had,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
well, it wouldn't foul as bad that way.
It wouldn't
right?
foul, and I'll tell you, I needed to get down very quick in this much water. The fish were running deep
Yeah,
and fast.
and fast.
bucktail, first I couldn't get bucktail that big, and second it would have floated too much.
Right.
I could put weight, but then that would have been hard
Right.
to cast. So that was a good idea.
What was your leader built like?
This was a medium sinking line, so it
So
was
it's like
a
an
short,
intermediate, yeah.
short 8-foot, like an intermediate, short 8-foot leader with 40-pound shot tippet and 10-pound
chucking
tippet.
out there, and was there wind and everything?
A
too?
lot of wind, a lot of
Oh,
wind.
yeah.
I mean, it was all I could do. The only lucky thing was that in the drift, the fish were coming in, and I had time to think, and all I had to do is throw 10, 15 feet in front. It wasn't had to be that accurate. So I could think, look at my back cast,
and-
turn around. I mean, a tournament cast type thing.
You're right.
I gave it all I had to
Yeah.
make that cast because the fly was,
It was huge.
had
Anybody
it been
knows.
natural
it's been thrown-
material, you know,
Right. What
two
rod
chickens
was
would have
it?
given their life to do that, to make that fly.
One of those.
Yeah, the rod was a experimental rod. I had just left Fenwick and gone to Sage. You know, Sage was formed from Fenwick.
Right.
And Don Green had designed a 12-weight that was going to be the 12-weight RPL. And that's what that was.
You were throwing a 12-weight on top of it?
Yeah. It was a
Oh,
12-weight,
wow.
and it was a softer tip. By today's standards, it was probably more like an 11.
Oh,
You know,
I
things
see.
have changed, things
Yeah,
have different.
oh, sure,
blah, blah, blah.
sure.
So it was probably like that, but it was an experimental. You look at the blank, and it's a brown, and it looks like a Sage, but it was that's what it was.
Do you still have that rod?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
That's
I have
pretty
the rod,
neat.
yeah, and I have the Seamaster. I caught it in too.
Now, I know you had a marlin record, too.
Yeah.
It was the only one
in the continental United States, wasn't it?
That's right, that's right. And the marlin record I caught in North Carolina. And also was the same problem. They wouldn't take us out because of the fly rod thing. As a matter of fact, I went out only one time. The guy was not thrilled with us. I caught the fish, everybody's jumping up
That's
and down.
a lot of pressure.
And the guy was like, not very, he took us back in. And he said he's sorry he took us out with a little wimpy rod and so on. And Bob Stearns was with us. He said, but tomorrow's my turn. I said, sure. I picked the camera. We showed up the next day. He wouldn't take us out. We had to come in.
And you already had a world record.
I already had a world record. Bob couldn't. And the guy
That's
said,
incredible.
look, Bob said, look, Chico's going to be in Field and Stream. It's 2 million people, 2 million circulation.
Right.
10 or 12, 8 or 10 million people going to read this. And the guy went, oh my God, everybody's going to see me with the wimpy rod.
He thought it was bad.
Oh, he thought it was bad. Yeah, he thought it was bad. It's a different. Yesterday, and Bob, I said, Bob, maybe this is a Latin thing. You go ahead and step in. And he came from North Carolina
prejudiced or whatever.
Had nothing to do with that. Another wimpy guy with a fly rod.
Wimpy rod.
With a fly rod. He wouldn't take Bob. I said, look, I'll stay in the. You both stay in the dock. Don't step in the boat with that wimpy rod. Nothing over 30 pounds.
Oh my goodness.
This was 1980, 81, 80.
Talk about prejudice.
Yeah.
Prejudice against a form of fishing.
Oh, not only that, the guy who took us and the people that were paying for me to be there with the Department of Travel and Tourism of North Carolina. And the guy lived in Raleigh. He was in Raleigh forever. Well, Raleigh's more than 100 miles. So forget that. Joel Arrington was just as an outsider as I was. It was kind of interesting.
Now, there's a funny story about you on the radio, right? Didn't they?
Oh, God,
they
yes. What a
interviewed
thing
you,
to do.
the marlin catch and all that.
What a thing to do. The guy said, you've caught a marlin. We're so happy. We knew you could do it. Anything you want. I said, what do you want to do tonight? Anything you want to eat? Anything? I don't know why. I said, you know what? All I want is the biggest prime rib, a Caesar salad, and a bottle of Lafite Rothschild.
And that's what you
The guy
wanted.
said, no problem. You got it. So we get over there. Well, I had more than one bottle of Lafite Rothschild. So I'm in rhythm with my soul.
Are you going to tell us how many? No.
I'm in rhythm with my soul.
That's right.
And I don't know why I did this. This was the days of what you might call it.
Was it Jose Jimenez or whatever his name was?
Chico Espuela and the what was the program at night? I forget.
Laughing?
John Belushi.
Saturday Night Live and all
Saturday
that.
Night Live. Okay. So they asked me, so you caught this fish, this is great. Now this is in radio that's going all over the country.
Right.
How has fishing has been, now that you left accounting and you're doing this as a business? I heard myself say, because I don't think I said that, I said, all of a sudden I changed my accent again, I don't know why I did this, and I said, well, fishing have been very, very good to me. Oh God, the woman, Natalie Case was her name. Was like, are you kidding? She looked at me, and I realized, what am I doing? So I said, just a little joke. What's happening here is that the people of North Carolina has been so nice to me. You make me feel comfortable. I
Chico,
feel that I can
thinking.
roll and do this. You know what? It went real well. Everybody laughed. They were watching. Everybody thought that was great.
That's incredible.
And I said, this is the second time you have me here. The first time I got the world record redfish and all of that. And I look forward.
You should have been a star there.
So everything rolled real well. But for a moment there, I was startled because I don't even know why I did that. But I know the Lafite Rothschild.
It snuck up on you. Let's talk about canoes.
Ah, yes.
You're going to go canoeing. Mm-hmm. I know you have to get going here. What's the setup you would use, real quick, for
If you're going to fly fish in a canoe, you need a canoe that you can stand on and I can stand on at the same time, because someone has to pull and someone has to stand up and cast.
Right.
In order to do that, the canoe needs to be stable.
Right.
But if the canoe is too wide, then pushing it forward or pulling it, you can never move much. So the trick is to have a fairly long canoe. 17 feet is good.
17 foot.
Flat bottom keel.
Flat bottom keel.
That way, with a 36-inch beam, you can still both stand up and fish.
Right.
And the canoe is narrow enough and long enough. I have pulled canoes, at least in the 80s. I don't know if I can do it now, 20 miles in a day, without even thinking about it. I can pole much further than I can walk.
Right.
So it's highly efficient. You push right into a fish, they don't hear you, etc.
And you have a special pole. Your pole breaks down.
My pole breaks down, and that's
Right.
real important. One, because a 12-foot pole, which is what you should use in a canoe, is an awkward animal to put in a canoe. Remember, even though the canoe is 17 feet, the last 3 feet is very narrow, and the last 3 feet over there is very narrow. So 6 out of 17, you got 11 feet.
Right.
And you're putting this 12-foot pole. It's an awkward thing. When you split it in half, that becomes 6 feet. 1, 2. When you're going through a little tunnel of mangroves,
You
and all
can
that,
break it down.
I break it down. I sit down and I pull sitting down,
Right.
and you go incredible speed through those tunnels, polling, because you don't have any slippage as the.
So it's a 6 foot, 6 foot.
6 foot, 6 foot.
Okay.
And finally, life being what it is, and theft and the problems that are around, when you take your canoe and put it on top of your utility vehicle, whatever, you split the pole into, you put it inside, you lock the car.
Locked.
You're fine. So
Yes.
for all those reasons, that works very well. But you want a flat bottom, half-inch keel, tumble home slightly, because on a 36-inch beam canoe, you may have a little bit of wobble, what they call oil canning. Oil canning. So in order to have it fairly stiff so the canoe rides well, a little bit of upturn on the freeboard helps, and that's called in a canoe tumble home.
Tumble home.
Yeah, neat word.
And so that's the one you'd use.
Yeah, I use.
How about a little trolling motor? Would you put that on for a long distance thing?
I have done that. It is nice, but you know what? You get a bit lazy when you sit down and when you start polling, you're standing up. It's like a walk in the woods. You see everything.
Right.
You become so much better hunter. And in very shallow water, in those way back little lagoons. I mean, some of the lagoons would be the size of this, 1/4 of an acre, for example. Even the electric sometimes spook fish.
Real quick, I know you got to go. Scott rods. Do a
Yes.
lot with Scott rods. I just
Yes.
saw a rod that should have my name on it because I'm a small rod guy. I love
that's
small
what I
rods. I
think.
know you worked on the original Sage rods that were the shorter rods
That's
for
right.
casting
That's
the mangroves.
correct. That's correct.
And I still have one. And I saw this rod the other day, and it's intrigued me. It's what, only 6 foot, and it's a
the little rod.
3-piece.
That's right. It's a 6.5, 6'8", and this rod came about, to make a long story very short, because Lee Wolf started that trend, catching salmon, and he and I, in the last 20 years of his life, became very good friends, and we talked all the time. As a matter of fact, we
Talk about a legend.
He was fantastic. Only used clicker reels. I mean, he was unbelievable. We talked the last day before he crashed in the airplane. I sent him a letter that got there a day after he died. I mean, he was such a dear friend. And so was Joan Wolf, who was Joan Salvator when I met her 30-some-odd years ago. But at any rate, he liked the little rods, and we talked at length of where to use that. And the only manufacturer other than bamboo that he chose to build a graphite rod was Scott. And now I'm working for Scott, and so I built that rod because of him. And the rod is made with a 6-weight line to fish against the shoreline for baby snook and tarpon, to throw to silvers and chums and all that, short casts in little creeks in Alaska, to fish black bass or smallmouth bass against shorelines in canoes and prams and like that. And on days where you either feel like playing or the visibility is poor and you're casting in the flat and the redfish are close, that is a neat rod to use. Oh, yeah, it's very super accurate.
Yeah.
That's what it was. I did not expect at all that be the seller it was. I thought we'd sell 100 rods, and I said, oh my God, we sold a lot.
Oh, I know. It's a beautiful rod. If you pick it up, it's a neat rod.
And it's an HP, it's of the HP line, the Hilly Ply line. So it's a natural blank, unsanded, with the same grip. Powerful. If you hook a 40-pound tarpon on the flat, you'd get him. It's got the power on the bottom.
Yeah, it's tough in the thing.
Yeah.
Well, I know you got to run, and I want to thank you.
What a
You've always
pleasure.
been wonderful and always took time out to do this, and I really appreciate it.
Anytime.